The Unbothered Mind. Why your silence is your greatest weapon.
Part 1. The Problem. Chapter 1. The Reactive Epidemic. There is a moment that happens in conference rooms across the world every single day. A moment that separates the men who rise from the men who plateau. Picture this. A senior manager stands before his team, presenting a strategy he's spent 3 weeks developing. Midway through, a colleague interrupts, not with a question, but with a challenge. The tone is dismissive. The implication is clear. This plan is amateur work. Watch what happens next. The manager's face flushes. His jaw tightens. He hears the challenge not as professional feedback, but as personal attack. His voice rises half an octave. If you had actually read the full proposal instead of skimming it 5 minutes before this meeting. He catches himself. Oh, but it's too late. The room has shifted. His authority, carefully built over months, evaporates in 60 seconds. Everyone can feel it. The loss, the wound, the mistake. Now, same conference room, same interruption, different man. This manager hears the challenge, pauses for exactly 2 seconds, maintains eye contact, and responds. That's an important concern. Walk me through specifically where you see the weakness. His tone is level, curious even. He's not defending, he's investigating. Watch what happens. The challenger, expecting resistance, now has to actually articulate his objection. As he talks, his argument reveals itself to be more emotional than substantive. The room sees it. The manager never has to say a word against him. He simply listens, nods, and responds to the one legitimate point buried in the criticism. You're right about the timeline in Phase 3. Let me adjust that. The meeting continues, but something else has happened. The second manager has gained something the first one lost. Respect, credibility, power, same provocation, different men, different futures. This is not a story about conflict resolution tactics. This is a story about something more fundamental. This is about the most important skill almost no one teaches you. The ability to not react. Let me tell you something that nobody wants to admit. The modern world is engineered to provoke you. Your social media feed is optimized to trigger outrage because outrage drives engagement. Your news channels have discovered that fear and anger keep you watching. Your workplace politics reward the person who can get under your skin. Even your intimate relationships, the people you love most, have inadvertently learned which buttons produce which reactions. You are surrounded by systems and people who benefit from your emotional responses. Every reaction you give is a withdrawal from your power account. And most men, good men, intelligent men, capable men, are emotionally bankrupt by the time they're 30. They've given away so much of themselves, reacted so many times to so many provocations, that they don't even recognize themselves anymore. Here's what's happening at the biological level, and why this matters. Your amygdala, that almond-shaped cluster of neurons deep in your brain, evolved over millions of years to keep you alive. When your ancestors encountered a predator, the amygdala triggered an instant response: fight, flight, or freeze. This happened in milliseconds. It had to. Thinking gets you eaten. That system saved your ancestors' lives, and it's destroying yours, because your amygdala cannot tell the difference between a saber-toothed tiger and a passive-aggressive email from your boss. It cannot distinguish between a physical threat to your survival and a social challenge to your status. Both trigger the same cascade. Adrenaline floods your system, cortisol spikes, your heart rate increases, blood flows away from your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for reasoning, and into your muscles, preparing you for physical action. You're biochemically ready to run or fight. But you're sitting in a meeting, or reading a text message, or watching your partner's face during an argument. And in that state, flooded with stress hormones, your rational mind operating at 70% capacity. You make decisions. You say things. You react. Later, when the chemistry settles, you think, why did I say that? Why did I let them get to me? The answer is simple. You are operating with a nervous system designed for a world that no longer exists. But here's what most people miss. Every one of those reactions costs you something. I call this the reaction tax. Every time you respond emotionally, every time you let someone pull a reaction from you, you pay. Sometimes you pay in time, spending hours or days mentally replaying the interaction. Sometimes you pay in energy, exhausted from the emotional expenditure. Sometimes you pay in reputation, as others witness your loss of composure and recalibrate how they see you. Sometimes you pay in leverage. The moment you react, you've revealed what matters to you, what hurts you, what you're protecting. You've given your opponent a map to your vulnerabilities, and sometimes you pay in opportunity. The promotion goes to someone else. The negotiation tilts against you. The relationship shifts in ways you can't quite identify but can definitely feel. Most men never calculate what their reactions are actually costing them. They just know they're tired. They're stressed. They feel like they're constantly on defense, constantly responding, constantly managing fires that somehow keep multiplying. Let me introduce you to a concept that will change how you see every interaction: the provocation economy. There are people in your life, right now, today, who profit from your reactions. Not financially necessarily, but psychologically. Your emotional response is currency. Only they collect it. Some do this consciously. Most do it unconsciously. But they all do it. There are 4 types of reaction hunters, and you need to recognize them. The dominant seeker provokes you to establish hierarchy. Every time you react, you've confirmed their position above you. Watch for them in professional settings, in male social groups, anywhere status is negotiated. They insult, challenge, interrupt, dismiss, all to see if you'll react. Your reaction is their confirmation of dominance. Your non-reaction confuses and neutralizes them. The validation addict provokes you to confirm they matter. They need to know they can affect you, move you, get inside your head. Typically found in relationships that are ending or have ended, in family dynamics where attention was scarce, in friendships where insecurity runs deep. They will say things designed to hurt you, not because they want you to hurt, but because your hurt proves they're significant. Your reaction feeds them. Your indifference starves them. The chaos agent provokes because your instability creates opportunity. When you're emotional, you're malleable. You make mistakes. You're easier to manipulate, easier to control, easier to exploit. These are the most dangerous because they're the most calculating. They appear in business dealings, in toxic relationships, in any environment where your poor decisions benefit them. They are studying you, learning your triggers, and using them strategically. The tester provokes to measure you. They're not trying to dominate you or feed off you. They're gathering data. Can you handle pressure? Do you maintain composure under challenge? Are you someone they can trust with responsibility, partnership, or intimacy? Mentors do this. Potential business partners do this. People considering whether to invest in you, professionally or personally, do this. Your reaction tells them everything they need to know. Here's the crucial insight. You cannot tell which type you're dealing with in the moment of provocation. The dominant seeker and the tester use similar tactics. The validation addict and the chaos agent often say the same kinds of things. You cannot diagnose the provocation while it's happening, but you don't need to, because the correct response to all 4 is the same. Don't give them the reaction, not because you're suppressing yourself, not because you're afraid, but because your reaction is the prize they're seeking. Oh, and you don't give prizes to people for bad behavior. They are not attacking you. They are fishing. And you keep biting. Let me tell you what happens when you stop biting. The dominant seeker loses interest and seeks easier targets. The validation addict eventually exhausts themselves and moves on. The chaos agent finds you're no longer useful and redirects their energy. And the tester? The tester sees exactly what they were looking for. Someone who has mastered themselves. Right now you might be thinking, but I can't just let people disrespect me. I can't be a doormat. I'm not asking you to be a doormat. I'm asking you to be strategic. A doormat reacts with submission. A reactive man responds with aggression. The unbothered man does neither. He observes. He considers. He chooses his response based on what serves him, not based on what he's feeling in the moment. This is not about becoming emotionless. This is about becoming selective. Think about the wealthiest person you know. Not the person with the most money, but the person with the most wealth, the most resources, the most options. They don't spend money on everything. They're selective. They invest deliberately. They say no to most opportunities so they can say yes to the right ones. Your emotional responses work the same way. The man who reacts to everything is emotionally impoverished. The man who selects his reactions carefully accumulates power. You are not being asked to become cold. You are being asked to become intentional. Consider this: every master of any craft, martial arts, music, business, relationships, has learned to separate stimulus from response. But the jazz musician hears a mistake and incorporates it into the improvisation. The martial artist receives an attack and redirects the energy. The negotiator hears an insult and finds the opportunity within it. They have all discovered the same truth. There is a space between what happens to you and how you respond. In that space lives all your power. Most people never discover that space exists. Their entire lives are spent in automatic reaction. Something happens, they respond. Someone speaks, they react. An emotion arises, they act on it immediately. They are not living. They are being lived. They are puppets, and the world pulls their strings. You don't have to be. Here's what I want you to understand before we go further. This is not about becoming someone you're not. And this is about becoming who you actually are beneath all the reactive conditioning. You were not born reactive. Watch a child who hasn't learned to take things personally yet. Someone knocks over their block tower, they shrug and rebuild. They don't carry grudges. They don't spend hours replaying the incident. They don't internalize it as a commentary on their worth. You learn to react, which means you can learn not to. The question is, what is all this reactivity actually costing you? Think about the last week. How many times did you react in ways you later regretted? How many times did you let someone get under your skin? How many hours did you spend mentally arguing with someone who wasn't even in the room? What could you have done with that time, that energy, that mental space? What opportunities did you miss while you were busy being provoked? The reaction tax is not theoretical. You're paying it right now. The question is whether you're ready to stop. Because here's the truth they don't tell you. Your silence is your greatest weapon. Not because it defeats others, but because it protects you. Every word you don't say in anger is power you keep. Every reaction you don't give is leverage you maintain. Every time you feel the hook and don't bite, you win. The world will keep trying to provoke you. The emails will keep coming. The challenges will keep arising. The buttons will keep getting pushed. But you don't have to keep biting. The moment you understand that your reaction is the prize, you will guard it like the treasure it is. This is where we begin. On Chapter 2, The Unbothered Advantage. The year is 1862. A Union Army commander receives a message in the middle of battle. His entire left flank has collapsed. 3,000 men are in full retreat. Confederate forces are pushing through the gap. If the rout continues, the entire Union position will be overrun within the hour. It will be a massacre. His officers watch him read the message. They're waiting for orders, yes, but they're also watching for something else, his reaction. Because they know that in the next 60 seconds, his emotional state will determine whether they live or die. The commander reads the message, nods once, looks up at his officers, and in a voice that carries no more urgency than if he were ordering breakfast, he says, "Gentlemen, we're going to need to adjust our position. Here's what we're going to do." He calmly issues a series of orders. Redeploy the reserve units to plug the gap. Pull back the right flank to create a defensive arc. Send runners to coordinate artillery support. The officers, taking their cue from his composure, move with purpose rather than panic. The Union line holds. The retreat doesn't become a rout. And decades later, when those officers wrote their memoirs, they all mentioned the same moment, their commander's absolute calm when everything was falling apart. One of them wrote, "I truly believe his composure that day saved 3,000 lives. If he had shown fear, we would have felt fear. If he had panicked, we would have broken. But he was a rock, and so we became rocks." That commander's name was Joshua Lawrence Chamberlain. And that moment on Little Round Top at Gettysburg became one of the most studied examples of leadership under pressure in military history. But this chapter is not about military history. It's about what Chamberlain's calm reveals about a fundamental truth of human psychology: composure compounds. Let me explain what I mean. When you remain unbothered in a moment of pressure, you gain an immediate tactical advantage. Your mind works better. You see options others miss. You make better decisions. But there's also a delayed strategic advantage that most people never consider. Your composure changes how everyone around you responds to the situation. Chamberlain's officers didn't just execute better tactics. They became calmer themselves. His emotional state created a ripple effect. One man's composure stabilized 3,000 men. This is what I call the unbothered advantage, and it operates on multiple levels simultaneously. First, cognitive clarity. When your amygdala detects a threat, remember, it can't tell the difference between a real threat and a social one. It triggers a stress response. Cortisol and adrenaline flood your system. This is not metaphorical. This is measurable chemistry. Here's what that chemistry does to your brain. Blood flow reduces to your prefrontal cortex by up to 30%. That's the part of your brain responsible for complex reasoning, planning, impulse control, and perspective-taking. It's literally the part that makes you intelligent. When you're reactive, you're operating at 70% of your cognitive capacity. You're trying to solve complex problems with a handicapped brain. Studies of decision-making under stress show this clearly. We'll put someone in an emotional state, and their problem-solving ability drops measurably. Pattern recognition suffers. Creative thinking diminishes. They default to either slash or thinking instead of seeing the full spectrum of options. But when you don't react, when you maintain composure, you maintain full access to your cognitive resources. You're playing chess while your reactive opponent is playing checkers. This is not a small advantage. In negotiations, relationships, professional conflicts, strategic decisions, the person who can think clearly has an overwhelming edge. Second, time dilation. There's a phenomenon that athletes and martial artists know well. In high-pressure moments, when they're fully present and calm, time seems to slow down. They see opportunities that happen too fast for others to notice. They respond to openings that appear and vanish in fractions of a second. This is not actually time slowing down. This is their observation accelerating. When you're not consumed by your emotional reaction, you're free to observe. You notice things. The slight hesitation before someone speaks, the micro-expression that reveals uncertainty, the pattern in how someone argues that exposes their real concern. Reactive people are stuck inside their own heads, managing their emotions, preparing their counter-arguments, protecting their egos. They're not watching. They're not listening. They're waiting to speak. The unbothered man is actually present. He sees moves others miss. He hears what's not being said. He detects leverage points invisible to those caught up in their reactions. This is why calm people consistently outperform reactive people even when they're less technically skilled. They're playing with more information. Third, social gravity. Here's something you've probably noticed but never named. In any group under pressure, people unconsciously orient toward the calmest person in the room. This is not conscious. This is primal. It's the same instinct that makes frightened animals cluster around the one who isn't panicking. The calm individual becomes the psychological anchor. Think about your own experience. When everything is chaotic, who do you want to hear from? The person who's as panicked as you are? Or the person who seems to have a handle on things? The unbothered person attracts. Their composure creates safety. People want to be near them, work with them, follow them. Not because they're smarter or more skilled, but because they're stable. This is leadership in its purest form. Leadership is not about having the answers. It's about maintaining yourself while you find the answers. The research on this is unambiguous. Studies of leadership across contexts, military, corporate, political, even familial, show that emotional volatility is the single strongest predictor of leadership failure. Stronger than incompetence, stronger than lack of vision, stronger than poor strategy. Conversely, emotional regulation is the single strongest predictor of sustained leadership success. You can be mediocre at your technical skills and brilliant at composure, and you will rise. You can be excellent at your technical skills and terrible at composure, and you will plateau. The world rewards the unbothered. Fourth, the stillness premium. Let me introduce you to a concept from economics: premium. A premium is the extra value something commands because of its scarcity. Gold has a premium over iron because it's rarer. Expertise has a premium over common knowledge because it's harder to acquire. Trust has a premium over contracts because it's more valuable and less common. Stillness has a premium. In a world where everyone is reactive, the person who is not reactive stands out. Their rarity makes them valuable. Think about it. How many people do you know who can remain calm under pressure? Who don't take things personally? Who can hear criticism without getting defensive? Who can face challenges without losing their composure? Not many. And the ones who can, they're memorable. You trust them differently. You rely on them differently. You perceive them differently. This is the stillness premium. It's the measurable advantage that accrues to those who have mastered non-reaction. It shows up in salaries. Calm people negotiate better and advocate for themselves more effectively because they can walk away. They're not desperate. Desperation is expensive. It shows up in relationships. Partners feel safer with someone who won't escalate every conflict into a war. Safety creates intimacy. Reactivity destroys it. It shows up in influence. The person who stays calm while everyone else is losing their minds becomes the person everyone looks to for direction. It shows up in longevity. Chronic stress from constant reactivity literally shortens your life. High cortisol levels are associated with cardiovascular disease, weakened immune function, accelerated aging. The unbothered live longer. This is not philosophy. This is mathematics. But here's what I need you to understand. The unbothered advantage is not about suppression. If you're bottling up your emotions, white-knuckling through provocations, forcing yourself to stay calm through sheer willpower, you're not unbothered. You're just delaying your reaction. You're a pressure cooker building toward an explosion. True unbotheredness is not suppression. It's selection. It's the ability to feel the full spectrum of human emotion and choose which ones to express, when to express them, and how. It's sovereignty over your internal state. The unbothered man is not a man who feels nothing. He's a man who feels everything and chooses his response. This is a critical distinction that most people miss. They confuse non-reaction with non-feeling. They think the goal is to become some kind of emotionless robot, stoic in the worst sense of the word, unfeeling, disconnected, cold. That's not strength. That's just another form of weakness. It's hiding. Real strength is the ability to stand in the full fire of your emotions. Anger, fear, hurt, shame, and still choose how you respond. Not because you're controlling yourself through force, but because you've developed the capacity to witness your emotions without being controlled by them. You can feel angry and not speak in anger. You can feel afraid and not act from fear. You can feel hurt and not retaliate from that hurt. The emotion is valid. The information it provides is useful, but you are not obligated to let it drive your behavior. This is what separates the unbothered from the suppressed. The suppressed man is at war with his emotions. The unbothered man is in dialogue with them. So when I talk about the unbothered advantage, I'm not asking you to become less human. I'm asking you to become more sovereign. You've been told by culture, by media, by well-meaning people who didn't know better, that expressing yourself is strength, that authenticity means saying whatever you feel, whenever you feel it, that if you're not constantly voicing your emotions, you're being dishonest or repressed. This is a half-truth weaponized against you. Yes, expression can be strength, but indiscriminate expression is not strength. It's weakness. It's being controlled by every stimulus that comes your way. True strength is the ability to choose expression, to decide that this feeling, in this context, with this person, deserves to be expressed in this way, and that other feeling in that other context serves you better unexpressed. Selection, sovereignty, mastery. The unbothered mind does not suppress. It selects, and in that selection lives all your power. Think about what becomes available to you when you develop this capacity. You can navigate difficult conversations without them becoming wars. You can receive criticism and extract the useful parts without internalizing the rest. You can face setbacks without falling apart. You can pursue goals without being derailed by every obstacle. You can maintain relationships even when they're challenging because you're not constantly escalating every disagreement into a threat to your identity. You can be present for others because you're not consumed by your own reactions. You can lead because people trust you to stay solid when everything else is shaking. You can build because you're not constantly tearing down what you've built with reactive mistakes. This is not theoretical. This is the difference between the life you're living and the life you could be living. Tomorrow you will be provoked. Someone will say something. Something will go wrong. You'll face a challenge, a criticism, a setback, a betrayal. The question is not whether the provocation will come. It will. The question is, who will you be when it does? Will you be the man in the conference room whose face flushes, whose voice rises, who loses 60 seconds of composure and months of credibility? Or will you be the man who pauses, considers, and chooses his response based on what serves him rather than what he's feeling? How will you be the officer who panics when the flank collapses, spreading fear to everyone around you? Or will you be Chamberlain, the rock that holds when everything else is breaking? The unbothered advantage is not something you're born with. It's something you build, one moment at a time, one choice at a time, one non-reaction at a time. And the beautiful thing, the thing that makes all of this possible, is that you can start right now. Not when you're ready, not when you feel calm. Right now, in the next moment when you're provoked. Because the unbothered mind is not a destination you arrive at. It's a direction you choose, again and again and again, until choosing it becomes who you are. Part 2. The Techniques. Chapter 3. The 2-Second Empire. Let me tell you about the most important real estate in your entire existence. And it's not your home. It's not your office. It's not any physical location at all. It's the space between stimulus and response, and it measures approximately 2 seconds. In those 2 seconds, that tiny gap between something happening and you reacting to it, exists all of human freedom. Every choice you've ever made, every moment of self-determination, every instance of true autonomy has occurred in that space. Most people never discover it exists. They spend their entire lives in automatic reaction mode. Something happens, They respond instantly. Someone speaks, they react immediately. An emotion arises, they act on it without pause. They are not choosing their lives, they are being chosen by their lives. But you, if you can learn to find those 2 seconds and use them, you gain access to a different existence entirely. Let me show you why this matters at the biological level. Your brain processes information through multiple pathways. There's the fast pathway and the slow pathway. Understanding the difference between these two is critical to everything that follows. The fast pathway runs through your amygdala. When you encounter a stimulus, a raised voice, a critical email, a disrespectful comment, your amygdala processes it in approximately 80 milliseconds. That's faster than conscious thought. That's faster than you can even identify what you're feeling. In those 80 milliseconds, your amygdala makes a threat assessment. It asks one simple question: is this dangerous? And here's the problem. Your amygdala is terrible at its job in the modern world. It evolved to detect saber-toothed tigers and hostile tribes. It's optimized for physical survival threats. So when it encounters a social threat, a challenge to your status, a criticism of your work, a romantic rejection, it cannot tell the difference. To your amygdala, all threats are survival threats. So it triggers the same response, the fight or flight cascade. Adrenaline spikes, cortisol floods your system, your heart rate increases. Blood flows away from your prefrontal cortex and into your muscles. Your pupils dilate. Your breathing becomes shallow. You are biochemically ready to fight or run. But you're sitting in a meeting, or reading a text, or talking to your partner. And in that state, amygdala hijacked, prefrontal cortex compromised, stress hormones surging, you speak, you decide, you act. This is the fast pathway. Stimulus to reaction in under 1 second. And it ruins lives every single day. But there's another pathway, the slow pathway. The slow pathway runs through your prefrontal cortex, the newest part of your brain evolutionarily, the part that makes you human. This is where reasoning happens, where perspective lives, where you can consider consequences and alternatives and choose your response deliberately. The prefrontal cortex is sophisticated. It can do things the amygdala cannot. It can consider context. It can weigh options. It can think about the future. It can override your initial emotional reaction with something more strategic. But it's slow. It takes approximately 1.5 to 2.5 seconds to engage. 2 seconds. That's all that stands between the amygdala's automatic reaction and the prefrontal cortex's conscious choice. 2 seconds is the gap. 2 seconds is the empire. Well, here's what happens in those 2 seconds if you know how to use them. Your amygdala fires. You feel the spike, the anger, the defensiveness, the hurt, whatever your particular reaction pattern is. But before you speak or act, you pause. In that pause, your prefrontal cortex comes online. It receives the emotional data from your amygdala, but it also receives contextual data. It considers the bigger picture. It asks better questions than, is this dangerous? It asks, what's really happening here? What outcome do I want? What response serves me? And then, only then, you choose your response. Same stimulus, different pathway, different outcome. This is not theory. This is neuroscience. And it's trainable. Studies on neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to form new neural pathways, show something remarkable. With practice, you can strengthen the connection between stimulus and prefrontal response. You can literally rewire your brain so that the slow pathway becomes faster, becomes more automatic, becomes your default. Calm is not a trait you're born with. Calm is a skill you develop, but you have to practice, and you have to know what you're practicing. Let me give you the protocol. The 2-second protocol, 4 steps. Step 1, recognition. The first skill is feeling the spike. This sounds obvious, but most people are so disconnected from their bodies that they don't notice their stress response until they're already reacting from it. Learn to recognize your personal spike pattern. For most people, it includes some combination of increased heart rate, muscle tension, especially in the jaw, shoulders, or fists, heat, face flushing, neck getting warm, shallow or rapid breathing, tunnel vision. Your field of view literally narrows. Time distortion. Everything seems to speed up. Your pattern might be slightly different, but there is a pattern. Your body tells you when you're triggered. You just have to learn its language. The practice here is simple body awareness. Throughout your day, periodically check in. Where am I holding tension? How's my breathing? What's my heart rate? This builds the baseline awareness you need to notice when something changes. Step 2. Labeling the moment you feel the spike. Name it. Silently, internally. This is anger. This is defensiveness. This is fear. This is shame. This seems too simple to matter. It's not. There's a neurological phenomenon called affect labeling. When you name an emotion, you activate different parts of your brain than when you just feel it. Specifically, you engage your prefrontal cortex, the part that can regulate emotion. Brain imaging studies show that labeling an emotion reduces amygdala activity by up to 50%. 50%, just from naming what you're feeling. Why does this work? Because the act of labeling requires you to step outside the emotion enough to observe it. You shift from I am angry to I am experiencing anger. That shift creates distance. Distance creates choice. Practice. The next time you feel a strong emotion, pause and name it. Nothing else. Just the label. Watch what happens to the intensity. Step 3. Breathing. Once you've recognized and labeled the emotion, breathe. One complete breath cycle. Minimum 4 seconds. This is not woo-woo. This is physiology. Your autonomic nervous system has 2 branches, sympathetic, stress response, and parasympathetic, relaxation response. When your amygdala triggers the stress response, it activates the sympathetic branch. Heart rate up, breathing shallow, muscles tense. But here's the key. You can manually activate the parasympathetic branch by controlling your breathing. Slow, deep breathing, especially when the exhale is longer than the inhale, directly stimulates the vagus nerve, which triggers parasympathetic activation. The breath is a bridge between your automatic nervous system and your conscious control. It's the one autonomic function you can deliberately regulate. 4 seconds in through your nose. 4 seconds out through your mouth. 1 cycle. That's enough to begin the shift. Advanced version. 4 in. Hold for 4. 6 out. The extended exhale amplifies parasympathetic activation. This gives your prefrontal cortex time to come online. Remember, it needs 1.5 to 2.5 seconds. 1 breath cycle gives it that time. Step 4. Choosing now. With your prefrontal cortex engaged, with your amygdala activity reduced, with your nervous system beginning to shift toward calm, ask yourself one question. What serves me here? Not what do I feel like doing? Not what would feel satisfying? Not what do they deserve? What serves you? This question redirects your cognitive resources from emotional reaction to strategic thinking. It forces you to consider consequences, to think about your goals, to evaluate options. Sometimes what serves you is speaking. Sometimes it's silence. Sometimes it's asking a question. Sometimes it's leaving. But it's chosen, or not reflexive. This is the 2-second protocol. 4 steps, hundreds of applications. 1 outcome. You gain sovereignty over yourself. Let me show you how it works in practice. Scenario. You're in a meeting. A colleague dismisses your idea publicly with a condescending comment. Fast pathway, automatic reaction. Your face flushes. You snap back. If you actually understood the data instead of just skimming it, The room gets awkward. You've lost composure. Even if you're right, you've lost. 2-second protocol. Recognition. You feel the heat in your face, the tension in your jaw. You feel the urge to defend. Labeling, this is defensiveness. This is anger. Breathing. 4 count in, 4 count out. Choosing. What serves me here? Probably not escalation. What if you asked, can you be more specific about your concern? Now the burden is on them to articulate their objection. You're calm. You're curious. You haven't defended, but you also haven't submitted. Different approach, different outcome. 2 seconds made the difference. Now let me give you 3 additional techniques that extend the 2-second protocol. These are for moments when you need even more distance between stimulus and response. The detachment protocols. Protocol 1, the observer position. This is a technique from cognitive behavioral therapy, and it's devastatingly effective. When you're in a charged situation, mentally step outside yourself. Imagine you're watching the scene from above, like a camera mounted on the ceiling. Narrate what you see. There's a man sitting at a table. Someone has just criticized his work. The man is feeling defensive. His body language is tightening. He's about to respond. This creates psychological distance. You're no longer inside the experience, you're observing it, and observation reduces emotional intensity by 30 to 40%. Why? Because the part of your brain that narrates cannot be fully consumed by emotion. You've split your attention. The emotion is still there, but it's not overwhelming you. Practice. Next time you are in a difficult conversation, briefly adopt the observer position. Notice how it changes what you feel and what you choose to do. Protocol 2, the zoom out. Ask yourself 3 questions in sequence. Will this matter in 10 minutes? Will this matter in 10 months? Will this matter in 10 years? Most provocations, and I mean most, is probably 95%, fail the 10-month test entirely. They're completely irrelevant within weeks, but in the moment they feel enormous. Your amygdala doesn't have a sense of scale. Everything feels like a 10-year problem. The zoom out gives you perspective. It reminds you that this moment, as intense as it feels, is likely trivial in the scope of your life. Someone cut you off in traffic. 10 years, meaningless. Someone was rude in an email. 10 months, forgotten. Someone challenged you in a meeting. 10 minutes, you'll be thinking about something else. This doesn't mean nothing matters. Some things do matter long-term, but far fewer than your amygdala believes. The zoom out helps you allocate your emotional resources appropriately. React to the things that actually matter. Ignore the rest. Wish Protocol 3, the curiosity switch. This is perhaps the most powerful technique I know, and it works because of a simple neurological fact. Curiosity and anger cannot coexist. They use conflicting neural pathways. When you're curious, you're in an open, receptive state. When you're angry, you're in a closed, defensive state. You cannot be both simultaneously. So when you feel yourself getting triggered, flip the switch. Replace judgment with curiosity. Instead of, this person is being disrespectful. Ask, what's driving this behavior? What are they actually afraid of? What unmet need is this satisfying for them? Instead of, this is unfair, ask, what perspective would make this seem reasonable to them? What information might I be missing? This is not about excusing bad behavior. And this is about changing your internal state from reactive to receptive. And here's what's remarkable. When you approach a provocation with genuine curiosity, you often discover information that changes how you respond. You see fear behind the aggression. You see insecurity behind the attack. You see pain behind the cruelty. This doesn't mean you accept it, but it means you can respond to what's actually happening rather than what you assumed was happening. And even if your curiosity reveals nothing useful about the other person, it has already changed you. You're no longer in fight mode. You're in learn mode. And learn mode makes better decisions than fight mode every single time. Let me be clear about something. These protocols are not about winning arguments or dominating others. They're about freeing yourself. Right now, you are controlled by every provocation. Someone knows how to push your buttons, and suddenly you're reacting. You're escalating. You're saying things you'll regret. You're acting against your own interests. You are a puppet, and your triggers are the strings. These protocols cut the strings. They give you back sovereignty. They give you choice. They give you those 2 seconds where freedom lives. But here's what you need to understand. This is a skill. Skills require practice. You will not master this by reading about it. You will not transform by understanding the theory. You will only change by doing the practice, and the practice is this. Every single day, you will be provoked. Small provocations, large provocations, everything in between. Each one is an opportunity. Each one is a repetition. Each one is a chance to find those 2 seconds, to engage the protocol, to strengthen the neural pathway from stimulus to conscious choice, instead of automatic reaction. The first 100 times, you'll mostly fail. You'll recognize the spike after you've already reacted. That's fine. You're building awareness. The next 100 times, you'll catch yourself during the reaction. You'll be mid-sentence in a defensive response and think, "Oh, I'm doing it again." Good. You're getting faster. The next 100 times, you'll catch yourself at the beginning. You'll feel the spike, recognize it, and sometimes manage to pause before responding. Progress. And eventually, and this is where the real transformation happens, you'll catch yourself before the spike has fully formed. You'll feel it rising, and you'll intercept it, not suppressing it. Just meeting it with awareness, with breathing, with choice. That's when you've built the 2-second empire. That's when you've rewired your brain. That's when you've become unbothered. 2 seconds. That's all it takes. That's all that stands between the life you're living and the life you could live. Between the man you've been and the man you could become. Every master, every person who has ever achieved emotional sovereignty, was once someone who could not find those 2 seconds, who reacted automatically, who was controlled by their emotions. Then they practiced. They failed. They practiced more. They failed better. They kept practicing until 2 seconds became their default, until choice became their nature, until unbothered became who they are. You can do this, not because it's easy. It's not. But because it's practice. And anything that's practice can be learned. The 2 seconds are there. They've always been there. You just have to find them. Starting now. Chapter 4. The Power of Strategic Silence. There's a story, possibly apocryphal but instructive either way, about a legendary negotiator who won a $40 million deal by saying almost nothing during a 3-hour meeting. He sat across from the CEO of a company he was trying to acquire. The CEO had prepared extensively. He had valuations, comparisons, arguments for why his company was worth more than the offer. He was ready for a battle. The negotiator opened with his offer. The CEO responded with all his arguments against it. And then, the negotiator said nothing. He simply sat there, maintaining eye contact, face neutral, waiting. The silence stretched. 5 seconds. 10 seconds. 15. The CEO, uncomfortable, elaborated on his arguments. Still nothing from the negotiator. More silence. The CEO added more information, began listing concessions he might consider, talked himself into revealing his actual bottom line, all while the negotiator simply listened. 3 hours later, they shook hands on a deal that was millions below what the CEO had planned to accept. When asked afterward how he'd done it, the negotiator said, "Silence is a canvas. People paint their insecurities on it." This is the power of strategic silence, and it's one of the most underutilized tools in the unbothered arsenal. Most people experience silence as pressure, as discomfort, as something that needs to be filled. This is a weakness that can be exploited, not maliciously, but strategically. While the person who is comfortable with silence controls the conversation, let me show you why. The psychology of silence. Human beings are social animals. We evolved in small tribes where group cohesion meant survival. Silence in that context often signaled disapproval, rejection, or danger. We are hardwired to interpret silence as potentially threatening. This is why awkward silences feel awkward. Your nervous system is signaling, something's wrong, connection is breaking, do something. Most people respond to this signal by talking. They fill the silence with words, often words they haven't thought through, often revealing more than they intended. The unbothered man has trained himself to sit in silence without discomfort. This gives him a devastating advantage. While others are rushing to fill the void, he's observing, considering, choosing his words deliberately. But not all silences are created equal. Let me introduce you to 5 types of powerful silence, each serving a different strategic purpose. The 5 types of powerful silence. Type 1, the thinking pause. This is silence before you answer a question or respond to a comment. It signals that you're actually considering what was said, that you're not reacting automatically. Typical conversation. What do you think of the proposal? I think it's great. I love the way you've structured. Notice the instant response. No pause, no consideration, just filling the silence. With the thinking pause. What do you think of the proposal? 3-second pause. I see some real strengths here, particularly in how you've addressed the timeline concerns. Same content. But the pause changes everything. It signals respect for the question. It demonstrates thoughtfulness. It makes your response carry more weight because it's clearly considered, not reflexive. Practice. When asked a question, pause for 3 seconds before answering. Every time. Watch how it changes the dynamic. Type 2. The wait. Pause. This is silence after someone speaks, letting their words hang in the air. It amplifies what they've said, for better or worse. If someone has made a strong point, the wait pause honors it. You're not rushing to respond. You're letting their insight land. If someone has said something weak or manipulative, the wait pause exposes it. Their words sit there, unsupported by your reaction, and often collapse under their own emptiness. Example, someone makes an accusation designed to provoke you. You clearly don't care about this project as much as the rest of us do. Reactive response. That's not true. I've been working nights on this while you... With the wait pause. 5 seconds of silence. Eye contact. Neutral expression. Then, calmly. I disagree with that assessment. The pause did the work. Their accusation sat there, unsupported, revealing itself as the provocation it was. Your eventual response is almost an afterthought. Type 3. The invitation pause. This is silence that creates space for others to fill. It's particularly powerful in negotiations, interviews, and any situation where you want someone to reveal more than they intended. Someone gives you a partial answer. Instead of asking a follow-up question, you simply wait. Maintain eye contact. Slight nod. But say nothing. Most people cannot tolerate this. They'll keep talking, and often what comes next is more honest, more revealing, more useful than what came first. Therapists use this constantly. Police interrogators use this. Skilled managers use this. The silence invites elaboration, and people, uncomfortable with the void, will elaborate. Try it in your next conversation. When someone finishes speaking, wait 3 seconds before responding. See what they add. Type 4. The disagreement. Pause. This is perhaps the most powerful silence. The pause, instead of argument. Someone says something you disagree with. Instead of immediately countering, you pause. You let the disagreement exist without resolving it. This does something remarkable. It forces the other person to reflect on what they've said. When you argue immediately, What you give them someone to push against. They can defend their position, escalate, dig in. But when you're silent, they're alone with their statement. Often, they'll reconsider it themselves. They'll soften it, qualify it, or even retract it, without you having said a word. Example: the only way to succeed in this industry is to work 80-hour weeks. Reactive response: that's ridiculous. Plenty of people succeed with reasonable hours, and burnout is a real. With disagreement, pause. 5-second silence, thoughtful expression. Then, I've seen different approaches work. You've disagreed, but gently, and the pause gave them space to hear their own absolutism. Often they'll walk it back themselves. Type 5, the closing pause. This is silence after you've made your point. You say what you need to say, then stop. Let it land. Now don't elaborate, don't justify, don't fill the space. This is the hardest silence for most people because it requires confidence. You have to trust that your point was clear and complete. You have to resist the urge to explain or defend or persuade further. Example: salary negotiation. Based on my research and the value I bring, I'm looking for $120,000. Silence. Do not fill this silence. Do not justify. Do not explain. You've stated your position. Now let them respond. Most people will immediately start talking again. I know that might seem high, but if you consider, this weakens the ask. It suggests you're not confident in it. The closing pause lets your statement stand. It conveys certainty. It shifts the burden of response to them. These 5 types of silence are tools. Use them deliberately. But there's an even more powerful application of silence that goes beyond conversational tactics. Let me introduce you to a concept that might save you years of wasted energy: the non-response response. A CEO once received a vicious public attack from a former business partner. The partner published a detailed blog post accusing the CEO of unethical practices, broken promises, and professional betrayal. It was shared thousands of times. Media outlets picked it up. Employees were asking questions. Investors were concerned. The CEO's advisors prepared a detailed rebuttal. Point-by-point refutations. Evidence. Testimony. A full defense. The CEO read it, thanked them, and instead issued one public statement: "I wish him well in his future endeavors." That was it. No defense, no counterattack, no engagement with the accusations at all. And within a week, public opinion had shifted entirely in the CEO's favor. Why? Because by not responding, he'd done something counterintuitive. He'd made the attack irrelevant. When you respond to an attack, you elevate it. Your response signals that the accusation has merit worth addressing. You give it legitimacy, oxygen, and audience. Your response, even if completely correct, even if devastating in its logic, keeps the story alive. It gives your attacker exactly what they wanted: your attention, your time, your emotional energy. The non-response response says, "This doesn't merit my engagement." And often, that silence speaks louder than any rebuttal could. Here's when to use the non-response response. When the accusation is obviously false to anyone who knows you, your silence lets the falseness reveal itself. Your defense might actually make people wonder if there's truth to it. When your response would give the attacker what they want. Some people attack specifically to provoke a reaction. Your response is their victory. Deny them. When time alone will resolve the situation. Many accusations collapse under their own weight if you simply wait. Lies are hard to maintain. Truth doesn't need constant defense. When engaging would drag you into a battle that serves no one. Not every challenge requires a response. Sometimes the strongest move is to let it pass. This doesn't mean never defend yourself. There are times when silence is weakness, when response is necessary, but those times are rarer than most people think. The default for most people is defend every attack, respond to every criticism, engage with every provocation. Or the unbothered default is, let silence do the work. Respond only when response serves you. Now let me teach you something that will change every face-to-face interaction you have from this point forward. The neutral face. Your face has 43 muscles capable of producing over 10,000 distinct expressions. Micro-expressions, tiny, involuntary facial movements, occur in less than 1/25th of a second. Too fast for you to control consciously. Too fast for you to even know you're making them. But other people detect them, subconsciously. Your face is constantly leaking information, judgment, disagreement, attraction, disgust, fear, superiority, insecurity. Most people have no idea they're broadcasting all of this. The unbothered man learns to control his face, not by freezing it, that's robotic and off-putting, but by establishing a neutral baseline and returning to it consciously. Here's what neutral looks like. Jaw, relaxed, not clenched, slight space between your molars. Eyes, soft gaze, not staring hard but not unfocused, looking at the person, not through them. Brow, level, not furrowed or raised. This is critical. The brow broadcasts judgment more than any other feature. Mouth, closed lips, very slight upturn at the corners. Not a smile, but not flat either. The subtle suggestion of openness. This is your baseline. Practice it in a mirror until it feels natural. Then practice holding it during conversations, especially challenging ones. The goal is not to be expressionless. The goal is to choose your expressions deliberately, rather than leaking them unconsciously. When you want to show approval, you can. When you want to signal concern, you can. But you're not broadcasting every judgment, every reaction, every micro-emotion that crosses your mind. This is particularly powerful in negotiations, conflicts, and any situation where emotional control provides advantage. Imagine someone is trying to provoke you. They're watching your face for the reaction, the tightening around your eyes, the set of your jaw, the flash of anger or hurt, and they get neutral, calm, present, but unreadable. They have no idea if they've landed the hit, no feedback to calibrate their next attack. They're fishing blind. This is deeply disorienting to someone trying to manipulate you, and it's deeply stabilizing for you. Practice the neutral face. Start with 5 minutes in front of a mirror, then hold it during a low-stakes conversation. Then, during a challenging one, over time, neutral becomes your default, and from that neutral base, you can choose any expression that serves you. You control your face, or your face controls you. Let me bring all of this together with a principle that underlies every form of strategic silence. Words are common. Everyone has them. They spill from people constantly, losing value with every syllable. Silence is rare. It is noticeable. It is remembered. When everyone else is talking, the person who is silent stands out. When everyone else is explaining, defending, justifying, the person who simply states their position and stops commands attention. In a world of noise, silence is power. But, and this is critical, silence is only powerful when it comes from a place of choice, not fear. If you're silent because you're afraid to speak, that's not strategic silence. That's suppression. People can feel the difference. Strategic silence comes from confidence, from the knowledge that you could speak but choose not to, from the understanding that your silence serves you more than your words would. This is the distinction. The weak are silent because they must be. The strong are silent because they choose to be. Which one are you? The unbothered man has learned something that most people never discover. A man who can hold his tongue holds something most men have surrendered. He holds his power, his composure, his mystery, his advantage. In a world where everyone is broadcasting everything, constantly signaling, constantly explaining, constantly defending, The man who is comfortable with silence operates in a different realm entirely. He is watching while others are performing. He is considering while others are reacting. He is choosing while others are compelled. This is not coldness. This is mastery. And it starts with the simple recognition that you don't have to fill every silence. You don't have to respond to every provocation. You don't have to explain yourself to people who haven't earned the explanation. Your silence is your greatest weapon, not because it defeats others, but because it protects you. Use it. Chapter 5. Gray Rock and Strategic Withdrawal. The concept of gray rock was developed by people dealing with narcissists, manipulators, and high-conflict personalities. The insight at its core is profound. Certain people feed on emotional reactions. Your anger feeds them. Your hurt feeds them. Your defensiveness, your frustration, to your visible distress, all of it is food. When you become as boring and uninteresting as a gray rock, completely unreactive, utterly bland, forgettable, they eventually lose interest and seek stimulation elsewhere. This is not about all people. Most people in your life deserve your full emotional presence. But there are some, and you know who they are, who have forfeited that right through their behavior. For these people, the gray rock method is not cruelty. It's survival. Let me show you how to identify them, how to implement the technique, and when to go beyond gray rock to something even more powerful. Complete withdrawal. Identifying emotional vampires. Not everyone who frustrates you is an emotional vampire. Some people are just difficult. Some are going through something. Some have legitimate grievances even if they express them poorly. Emotional vampires are different. They have patterns. Pattern 1. The drama generator. This person creates chaos for the engagement it produces. Everything is a crisis. Every situation is infused with unnecessary urgency, conflict, or emotional intensity. They'll create problems just to see how you react to them. They'll manufacture crises that require your emotional involvement to resolve. They'll turn simple situations into complex emotional events. Why? Because drama generates attention. Drama creates connection, even negative connection. And for the drama generator, negative connection is better than no connection. You'll recognize this person because being around them is exhausting. Every interaction leaves you drained, but you find yourself managing their emotions constantly. Pattern 2. The button pusher. This person has mapped your triggers and exploits them. They know exactly what to say to make you angry, defensive, hurt, or ashamed. And they say these things regularly. Sometimes it's overt, insults, accusations, provocations. Sometimes it's subtle, implications, insinuations, strategic jokes that aren't jokes. The key identifier: they seem to derive satisfaction from your reactions. You can see it in their face, their tone, their follow-up. Your distress entertains them. This is different from someone who occasionally hurts you thoughtlessly. The button pusher does it deliberately. They're studying you, learning what works, refining their approach. Pattern 3. The emotional hijacker. This person transfers their emotional state to you. When they're anxious, they create anxiety in you. When they're angry, they provoke anger in you. When they're depressed, they drag you down with them. This is not empathy. Empathy is feeling with someone. This is something else. They're using you to process their emotions. After interacting with them, you notice you're carrying feelings that aren't yours. You were fine before the conversation. Now you're agitated or sad or stressed, and you're not even sure why. These are the 3 primary types. They often overlap. Someone might be all 3, and for all 3 types, the same medicine applies. Gray rock. The gray rock method. The goal is simple. Become boring, uninteresting, unreactive, a gray rock sitting in a garden of flowers. Here's how. Response: minimization. When they speak to you, respond with the absolute minimum required by context. Them. I can't believe you did that. That was incredibly disrespectful. Gray Rock. Them. Are you even listening to me? This is important. Gray Rock. I hear you. Them. You always do this. You never care about anyone but yourself. Gray Rock. Okay. Notice what you're not doing. You're not defending. You're not explaining. You're not engaging with the content of their provocation at all. You're giving them nothing to work with. Emotional flatness. Maintain the same tone regardless of what they say. Calm. Neutral. Slightly disinterested. No variation. No peaks when they say something surprising. No valleys when they say something hurtful. Just flat. This is hard. They're trying to move you. Every instinct wants to respond to their emotion with emotion. But that's exactly what feeds them. The gray rock remains gray no matter what weather passes over it. Information starvation. Share nothing personal. Nothing about your life, your feelings, your plans, your relationships, your struggles, your successes. Everything becomes vague and generic. How's work? Fine. What did you do this weekend? Not much. Are you seeing anyone? I'm keeping my personal life private. You're not being rude. You're just boring, uninteresting, not worth the effort of prying. Every piece of information you share is potential ammunition. So you share nothing. Physical disengagement. When possible, minimize eye contact. Don't face them directly. Create physical distance. Keep conversations short. You're not hiding. You're just not making yourself available for engagement. And this requires discipline, especially with family members or coworkers you can't completely avoid. But you can still be minimally present. Brief check-ins, factual exchanges, then exit. The monotone voice. This is perhaps the most powerful element. When you speak, use a monotone voice. No inflection, no enthusiasm, no variation in pitch or pace. This signals, I am not emotionally engaged with this conversation. Practice this. It feels unnatural at first. We're trained to modulate our voices, to show interest, to match energy. But matching their energy is exactly what they want. Don't give it to them. Monotone, flat, gray. When to use gray rock. Gray rock is not for everyone. It's a specific tool for specific situations. Ex-partners you must co-parent with. You can't cut them out entirely. But you can make every interaction purely transactional. Kids' schedules, logistical coordination, nothing personal. Family members you cannot avoid. Holiday gatherings, family obligations. You have to be present, but you don't have to be emotionally available. Workplace antagonists you cannot escape. Colleague who targets you. Boss who feeds on your reactions. You need the job, so complete avoidance isn't possible. But gray rock makes you less appealing as a target. Anyone who has demonstrated they use your emotional responses against you. If someone has shown you that your vulnerability becomes their weapon, they've lost the right to your emotional presence. The key principle, gray rock, is for people who have proven they cannot be trusted with your authentic self. This is not cruelty. This is boundaries. But sometimes, even gray rock isn't enough. Sometimes the only real solution is more dramatic. The power of walking away. Most conflicts persist because both parties are over-invested in the outcome. Both need something from the other. Both are afraid of what happens if the relationship ends. This mutual dependency creates stalemate. Neither person has leverage because neither person is willing to leave. But when you are genuinely willing to walk away, everything changes. When you don't need the relationship to continue, you are free in a way your counterpart often is not. This is the ultimate form of strategic withdrawal, and it comes in 4 versions. Type 1, the physical walk away, literally, leaving the room, the conversation, the situation. This is for moments when staying means escalating, when your presence is enabling bad behavior, or when continuing the interaction serves no one. I'm going to step away for a bit. No explanation beyond that. No justification. You're not asking permission. You're informing them of what's happening. Then you leave. This works in arguments that are going nowhere, in provocations designed specifically to engage you, in any situation where your continued presence is making things worse. The key: do it calmly. The physical walk away is not storming out. It's not slamming doors. It's not theatrics. It's simply, I'm leaving now. And then doing it. Type 2. The temporal walk away. This is creating time distance. I need some time to think about this. Let's revisit this conversation tomorrow. I'm not ready to discuss this right now. You're not ending the relationship. You're pausing the engagement. And this is powerful because it breaks momentum. Many conflicts escalate purely because both parties keep engaging. The temporal walk away creates space for emotions to settle, for perspective to return. Use this when you feel yourself getting pulled into reactivity, when you know you're not in the right state to have the conversation productively, when you need time to consider your response. The rule: always follow through. If you say you'll revisit tomorrow, actually revisit tomorrow. The temporal walk away only works if you honor it. Type 3. The emotional walk away. This is withdrawing your emotional investment while physically remaining present. You're there, but you're not there. This looks a lot like gray rock, but it's deeper. Gray rock is a technique. The emotional walk away is a decision. Sign you've decided. This person no longer has access to my emotional life. They can say whatever they want. You're not moved, not because you're controlling your reactions, but because you genuinely don't care anymore. This typically happens after repeated betrayals, after exhausting all other options, after realizing the person will never change. It's not anger. It's not bitterness. It's indifference. And indifference, unlike anger, cannot be manipulated. The emotional walk away is what happens when you stop hoping the person will become who you need them to be. You accept who they actually are, and you adjust your investment accordingly. Type 4. The permanent walk away. This is ending the relationship entirely, cutting contact, blocking numbers, removing from your life. This is the nuclear option, and it should be. But sometimes it's necessary, when the relationship is actively harmful and cannot be fixed, when the person refuses to respect boundaries no matter how clearly you set them, when staying connected costs more than leaving. The permanent walk away requires two things: clarity and commitment. Clarity. You're not doing this in anger. You're not doing it as a threat or manipulation. You're doing it because you've determined that this relationship does not serve your well-being and cannot be salvaged. Commitment. Once you do it, you hold the boundary. No exceptions. No responding just this once. No allowing them back in because they've temporarily changed. The permanent walk-away only works if it's actually permanent. Otherwise, it's just another manipulation in the dance you've been doing with this person. Here's what all 4 types have in common. They require genuine willingness. The credibility requirement. You cannot fake the walk-away. People can sense when you're bluffing. If you threaten to leave, but they know you won't, you've just weakened your position. You've revealed that your boundaries are negotiable, that your walk-away is theater. The walk-away only works as a tool if it's real. This means, before you use it, you have to actually prepare to walk away. You have to build the life, the resources, the options that make walking away possible. In a job, have savings, have a resume ready, have connections, so that when you say, I'm prepared to leave if this continues, it's not a bluff. In a relationship, have emotional independence, have a support system, have a plan. So that when you say, I won't stay in a relationship where I'm treated this way, you mean it. In any conflict, have alternatives, have backup plans, have genuine willingness to accept the consequences of leaving. The unbothered man knows where the door is. That knowledge alone changes everything about how he's treated. Because when people know you'll actually walk away, they modify their behavior. Not always. Some people are too broken or too committed to their patterns. But many people will, and the ones who won't, you've just discovered they were never willing to treat you well, which is information worth having. But there's one more element to strategic withdrawal that we need to discuss, and it might be the most important. Information discipline. Everything you share can be used, your goals, your fears, your relationships, or your vulnerabilities, your plans, your weaknesses, your doubts, your hopes. All of it is data, and data in the wrong hands becomes weaponry. The unbothered man understands this, so he practices information discipline. Information discipline means you withhold by default and share by exception. Most people do the opposite. They share by default, constantly posting, constantly talking, constantly revealing, and withhold by exception, only keeping secret the things that feel obviously private. This is backward. In a world where information is power, the person who holds their information holds their power. Here's what this looks like in practice. Tactical vagueness. When people ask about your life, your plans, your situation, you give answers that are technically true, but strategically incomplete. How's work? Things are good. Staying busy. You haven't lied, but you also haven't revealed what projects you're working on, what you're struggling with, what opportunities you're pursuing. What are you doing this weekend? Still figuring that out. Again, true, but no specifics, no information that can be used to judge you, manipulate you, or interfere with your plans. The need to know principle. Before sharing anything, ask, does this person need to know this? Not would it be nice to share? Not do I feel like telling them? But do they need to know? Most of the time the answer is no. Your coworkers don't need to know about your relationship problems. Your family doesn't need to know about every career move you're considering. Your friends don't need to know every doubt you're experiencing. Share when there's a reason. Otherwise, hold. Bossy separating personal and professional. This is particularly important in workplace settings. The colleagues who seem friendly are still colleagues. The work environment that feels like family is still a professional environment. What you share can and will be used in evaluations, in political dynamics, in competition for resources. Keep personal life personal. Keep professional life professional. The boundaries exist for a reason. The privacy of process. Share outcomes, not process. Share what you've decided, not what you're deciding. Share what you've accomplished, not what you're attempting. Why? Because the process is vulnerable, it's messy, it's full of uncertainty and mistakes and changes of direction. When you share the process, you invite commentary, judgment, and interference. Most of it well-meaning, all of it complicating. But when you share outcomes, you control the narrative. You present the finished product. You don't subject your creative process, your decision-making, your journey to outside influence. Do the work in private. Share the results in public. Here's the principle underlying all of this. Your deepest thoughts are not public property. You are not obligated to explain yourself to everyone. You are not required to justify your choices to people who haven't earned that access. You are not responsible for making your internal life available for inspection. What no one knows, no one can attack. This is not paranoia. This is wisdom. Some people have earned access to your full self, your closest relationships, your most trusted friends, perhaps your family, if they've proven they can hold your vulnerability without weaponizing it. But most people haven't, and that's okay. They don't need access to your inner world to interact with you appropriately. Gray rock, strategic withdrawal, information discipline. These are not tools of weakness. These are tools of sovereignty. You are not trapped in any conversation. You are not imprisoned in any conflict. You are not required to give everyone access to your emotional life. Your presence is not a hostage. The door exists. The exit is there. You can leave. You can withdraw. You can stop engaging. The unbothered man knows this, and that knowledge, the simple recognition that he has options, that he can always walk away, changes everything about how he's treated. Because when you're willing to leave, people have to earn your presence. When you're willing to withhold, people have to earn your information. When you're willing to be gray rock, people have to earn your emotional engagement. And the ones who can't earn it, they reveal themselves, and you adjust accordingly. This is not cruelty. This is self-respect. You teach people how to treat you, and sometimes the teaching method is withdrawal. Use it. Part 3. The Application. Chapter 6. Unbothered in Relationships and Work. A couples therapist with 20 years of experience once shared an observation that changed how I think about relationships. The relationships that survive are not the ones without conflict. They are the ones where at least one partner can remain calm during conflict. She continued, I've seen brilliant compatibility destroyed by two people who both escalate. And I've seen questionable compatibility survive because one person refused to match the other's intensity. That calm person becomes the anchor. This is true in romantic relationships. It's true in professional relationships. It's true in every relationship. Someone has to be the anchor, and if you want mastery over your life, that someone needs to be you. Let me show you how to be unbothered in the two domains where it matters most: intimate relationships and professional life. Unbothered in romantic relationships. Intimate relationships provide the strongest provocations you'll ever face. Your partner knows you better than anyone. They've seen your vulnerabilities. They know your triggers. They have access to your deepest fears and insecurities. This creates intimacy. It also creates the potential for devastating conflict. Here's what you need to understand. The person who can stay calm during relationship conflict has enormous power. Not power over their partner, power to preserve the relationship. The first 3 seconds. When your partner is upset, angry, hurt, scared, they're experiencing heightened emotion. Their amygdala is active. Their stress response is engaged. In the first 3 seconds of your response, you'll either escalate or de-escalate. Most people match energy. Partner comes in hot, they respond hot. This is automatic, instinctive, and it destroys relationships over time. The unbothered approach. Respond lower. If they're at a 7, you respond at a 4. If they're at a 9, you respond at a 5. This is not dismissing them. This is providing ballast. You're the counterweight that prevents the relationship from capsizing. Practically, this means lower your voice when theirs rises. Slow your speech when theirs accelerates. Soften your body language when theirs tightens. Maintain calm eye contact when theirs is intense. You're not matching their state. You're inviting them to join yours. And here's what's remarkable. It works. Most of the time, within minutes, their intensity begins to match yours. They come down because you didn't go up. The reflection technique. When your partner is upset, their primary need is to be heard. Not fixed, not argued with. Heard. Before you respond to content, reflect back what you're hearing. What I hear you saying is that you felt alone when I made that decision without consulting you. Is that right? This does 3 things. First, it confirms you're actually listening. Most conflicts escalate because both parties feel unheard. The reflection technique proves you heard them. Second, it creates a pause. Instead of immediately defending or counterattacking, you're taking time to understand. That pause engages your prefrontal cortex. Third, it often clarifies the real issue. Sometimes what you reflect back will prompt them to say, "No, that's not quite it. It's more that," and now you're getting to the actual concern, not just the surface complaint. Practice this. In the next conflict, reflect before responding. So what you're saying is, or it sounds like you're feeling, or, if I understand correctly, you're concerned that. Watch what happens to the temperature of the conversation. The timeout protocol. Sometimes, despite your best efforts, you feel yourself getting triggered. Your heart rate is up. Your thoughts are getting defensive. You're about to say something you'll regret. This is when you implement the timeout protocol. I need 20 minutes. I'm starting to feel reactive, and I don't want to say something I don't mean. I'll come back, and we'll continue this conversation. Then you actually leave. Physically. Go for a walk. Sit in another room. Breathe. Let your nervous system settle. 20 minutes is not arbitrary. It's approximately how long it takes for cortisol levels to return to baseline after a stress response. When you return, you're a different person physiologically. You have access to your full cognitive capacity again. You can engage with the issue constructively. The key, always come back. The timeout protocol is not avoidance. It's strategic de-escalation with a commitment to re-engage. If you take a timeout and never return to the conversation, you've just abandoned your partner in their distress. That's not unbothered. That's dismissive. But if you take a timeout and return calmer, ready to actually solve the problem, you've just modeled emotional regulation. You've shown that taking space is not abandonment. It's self-management. Unbothered does not mean unloving. I need to be very clear about something. None of this is about being cold or distant or emotionally unavailable. Calm is a gift to your partner, not a weapon against them. When you remain composed during conflict, you're not withholding love. You're providing safety. You're creating the conditions for resolution. Your partner is already experiencing high emotion. If you match that high emotion, now you have two people in amygdala hijack, both saying things they don't mean, both attacking and defending, neither thinking clearly. But if you stay calm, you give them something to anchor to. You show them it's possible to navigate this without destroying each other. This is love. This is care. This is the hard work of maintaining yourself so your relationship can survive. The unbothered partner is often the partner who saves the relationship. Now let's talk about the other domain, where unbotheredness determines your trajectory. Professional life. Unbothered in professional life. There's a study that tracked professionals over a 20-year period, from early career to executive leadership. The researchers were trying to identify what predicted sustained success. And technical skills predicted early success, the first 5 to 7 years. If you were good at your craft, you advanced. But sustained success, the next 13 to 15 years, was predicted by one factor above all others: emotional regulation. The professionals who could not manage their reactions plateaued. Doesn't matter how brilliant they were technically. If they lost composure under pressure, if they couldn't handle criticism, if they made emotional decisions, they stalled. The ones who could manage their emotions kept rising. This is the reality no one tells you early in your career. After a certain level, everyone is competent. Everyone has the technical skills. What separates those who keep advancing from those who don't is the ability to remain unbothered. In meetings, the power of the pause. You're in a meeting, and you've just presented an idea. Someone challenges it aggressively, not thoughtfully, aggressively. Reactive response, immediate defense. Actually, if you look at the data, voice slightly elevated, body language defensive, unbothered response. Pause, 3 seconds. Then, that's an interesting concern. Walk me through your thinking. Notice what just happened. You didn't defend. You didn't agree. You invited elaboration. This does several things. It signals confidence. Only confident people can pause before responding. Insecure people react immediately. It shifts burden. Now they have to articulate their challenge. Often, when forced to elaborate, weak arguments expose themselves. It buys you time. In those 3 seconds of pause, plus the time they're talking, Your prefrontal cortex is engaging. You're thinking strategically about how to respond. The pause before speaking is one of the most powerful professional tools you have. It signals thoughtfulness. It demonstrates composure. It prevents reactive mistakes. Make it a habit. In every professional conversation, pause before responding, even when you know exactly what you want to say. The pause adds weight to your words. Responding to criticism, the Unbothered framework. You receive critical feedback. Maybe it's legitimate. Maybe it's politically motivated. Maybe it's both. The reactive person either gets defensive, "That's not fair. I did everything I could," or collapses. "You're right. I'm terrible at this." The unbothered person says, "Thank you for the feedback. Let me think about that." Then they actually think about it, away from the heat of the moment. And they determine, is this feedback valid? If yes, how do I address it? Is this feedback politically motivated? If yes, who is the actual audience, and what's my strategic response? Is this feedback from someone whose opinion I value? If no, file it appropriately. But the immediate response is always some version of, "Thank you for the feedback. This is not weakness. This is wisdom." You're not accepting the feedback as truth. You're acknowledging that they shared it, and you're giving yourself time to evaluate it properly. Most criticism loses its sting when you don't react to it immediately. When you take it home, consider it calmly and decide what, if any, action to take. With difficult bosses, the detachment perspective. Some bosses are difficult because they're under pressure. Some are difficult because they're incompetent. Some are difficult because they're genuinely toxic. For all three types, the same principle applies. Their behavior is about them, not you. When your boss is unreasonable, when they're hypercritical, when they take credit for your work or blame you for their mistakes, this is information about them, not about you. The unbothered professional maintains perspective. This person is struggling with insecurity, or bad training, or their own pressures. Their behavior reflects their limitations, not my worth. This doesn't mean you accept mistreatment, but it means you don't internalize it. You don't let their dysfunction become your dysfunction. Practically, keep documentation, unemotional factual records, not for revenge, for protection. If their behavior escalates, you have evidence. Always have exit options. Update your resume. Maintain your professional network. Have conversations with recruiters. Nothing makes you more unbothered than knowing you could leave if you needed to. Set boundaries where possible. You might not be able to control their behavior, but you can control how much access they have to your time, your emotional energy, your personal life. And remember, most bad bosses are temporary. Organizations shift. People move on. Your career is decades long. This difficult boss is a chapter, not the whole story. Don't let a chapter ruin the book. In negotiations, the calm advantage. Never react to the first offer. Never. When someone makes an offer, salary, contract terms, project scope, whatever, your first response should be silence. Not immediate acceptance, not immediate rejection. Silence. Then, questions. "Ang, help me understand how you arrived at these numbers. Walk me through the reasoning here. What flexibility exists in these terms?" You're not negotiating yet. You're gathering information, and you're demonstrating that you're not desperate, not reactive, not easily moved. The person who appears most willing to walk away has the strongest negotiating position, and willingness to walk away is signaled by calm. If you're anxious, if you're overeager, if you're reacting emotionally to offers, the other party knows they have leverage. You're showing them your cards. But if you're calm, thoughtful, genuinely willing to walk away if the terms don't serve you, you're negotiating from strength. This requires preparation. You need to know your alternatives. You need to know your minimum acceptable terms. And you need to actually be willing to walk away. But when you have those things, your calm becomes devastating in negotiations. In crisis, the OODA loop. Crises happen, projects fail, clients leave, mistakes get made, systems break. The natural human response to crisis is panic, freeze, or tunnel vision. None of these are useful. The trained response is the OODA loop. This comes from military strategy, but it applies everywhere. Observe what is actually happening, not what you fear is happening, not what might happen. What is happening right now? Orient. What does this mean? What are the implications? What's at stake? Decide. What is the single most important action right now? Not all the actions you will eventually need to take. The first one, act, execute, then return to observe. This is how you think clearly in chaos. You don't try to solve everything at once. You move through the loop. And critically, you use tactical breathing throughout. 4 count in, 4 count hold, 4 count out. This keeps your nervous system from spiraling. In crisis, your composure is contagious. If you're panicking, everyone around you panics. If you're calm, methodical, moving through the OODA loop, others will match your state. You set the tone. Choose it deliberately. The long game. Your career is not a sprint. It's a marathon that lasts 40 or 50 years. Every interaction is observed. Every loss of composure is noted. Every moment of calm is registered. You don't always see the consequences immediately, but they accumulate. The person who yells in meetings gets a reputation. The person who stays calm under pressure gets a different reputation. And reputations compound over decades. Early in your career, you might think emotional intensity signals passion or commitment. Sometimes it does. But as you rise, as stakes increase, as complexity grows, the value of emotional intensity drops, and the value of emotional regulation skyrockets. At senior levels, the assumption is that everyone cares, everyone is committed, everyone works hard. What differentiates people is their ability to stay composed under pressure. The executive who loses it when things go wrong doesn't get bigger responsibilities. The executive who stays solid becomes the person everyone relies on. Your unbotheredness today is building the career you'll have in 10 years. Invest accordingly. Bringing it together, whether in intimate relationships or professional environments, the principle is the same. Someone has to be the anchor. In relationships, the person who can stay calm during conflict protects the relationship from the damage both partners could do when flooded with emotion. In professional life, the person who can stay calm under pressure becomes the leader others look to when everything is falling apart. This is not about being emotionless. It's about being sovereign. You feel everything. You understand the stakes. You care deeply. But you've learned to create space between stimulus and response. You've built the capacity to feel intense emotion and still choose your behavior deliberately. This is mastery, and it's available to you. Starting with the next difficult conversation, the next professional challenge, the next moment of pressure. Will you be the anchor, or will you be the storm? For the choice, as always, is yours. Part 4. The Depth. Chapter 7. The Philosophical Foundation. Marcus Aurelius ruled the Roman Empire from 161 to 180 AD. He led armies. He managed the largest political entity on earth. He navigated plague, war, betrayal, and the collapse of systems he'd spent his life trying to preserve. He could have written anything: military strategy, political philosophy, instructions for successors. Instead, he wrote private journals coaching himself to remain unbothered by circumstances he could not control. These journals, known now as meditations, were never intended for publication. They were reminders to himself, mental exercises to maintain his composure in the face of overwhelming responsibility. 2,000 years later, those private writings have guided millions. Why? And because Marcus understood something fundamental about human existence. The mind can either be your servant or your master. If you don't actively train your mind, If you don't deliberately shape how you respond to circumstances, your mind will control you. You'll be reactive, you'll be driven by impulse and emotion, you'll be at the mercy of every external event. But if you learn to master your mind, if you develop sovereignty over your own responses, you gain a freedom that external circumstances cannot touch. This is the core insight of Stoic philosophy, and it's the foundation of everything we've discussed in this book. Let me show you the philosophical framework that makes unbotheredness possible. The dichotomy of control. Epictetus, a Stoic philosopher who lived as a slave before gaining freedom. He taught a principle so simple and so powerful that it transformed everyone who truly understood it. Some things are within your power. Some things are not. Your thoughts, your reactions, your choices, your effort, these are within your power. Other people's actions, external events, outcomes, other people's opinions of you, these are not within your power. Wisdom begins with learning to tell the difference. Most human suffering comes from investing emotional energy in things outside your control. You cannot control whether you get the promotion. You can control whether you do excellent work. You cannot control whether your partner stays. You can control whether you're worth staying with. You cannot control what others say about you. You can control who you actually are. Energy invested in what you cannot control is energy wasted. It's worse than wasted. It's destructive. It creates anxiety, resentment, helplessness, but energy invested in what you can control compounds. It makes you stronger, more capable, more resilient. The unbothered man has internalized this dichotomy. He knows exactly where his power lives, in his choices, not in his circumstances. This doesn't mean he doesn't care about outcomes. It means he focuses on process. Example, you're interviewing for a job you really want. The reactive person obsesses over whether they'll get it. They imagine scenarios. They try to control what the interviewer thinks. They stress about factors completely outside their control. The unbothered person focuses on what they can control, preparing thoroughly, showing up rested and confident, answering questions authentically, following up appropriately. Then they let it go. They did what was in their power. The outcome is outside their power, so they don't carry it. This creates profound psychological freedom. You are no longer hostage to results. You're committed to process. The discipline of ascent. Epictetus taught another critical principle. You do not control first impressions, the automatic thoughts and emotions that arise when something happens, but you do control second impressions, whether you agree with your initial judgment. Someone cuts you off in traffic. First impression? That's dangerous. They're an asshole. This happens automatically. You didn't choose it. But then comes the second impression, the moment where you decide, do I agree with this initial judgment? Do I let this thought drive my behavior? The reactive person assents immediately. Yes, they are an asshole, and I'm justified in being angry. And they act from that anger. The unbothered person pauses. I'm experiencing anger, but is this thought useful? Is it true? Does acting on it serve me? Often the answer is no, and they let it go. Epictetus said, "It is not things that disturb us, but our judgments about things." The traffic incident didn't upset you. Your judgment about the traffic incident upset you. This is liberating because it means you are never truly at the mercy of external events. You are at the mercy of your judgments about external events, and your judgments are within your control. Practice. The next time you have a strong negative reaction, pause and identify the judgment underneath it. This shouldn't have happened. They should know better. This is unfair. Then ask, is this judgment helping me? Is it accurate? Can I hold it more loosely? Often you'll find that you can, and when you do, the disturbance lessens. Premeditation of adversity. Seneca, another Stoic philosopher, taught a practice that sounds dark but is actually profoundly stabilizing. Imagine the worst things that could happen, not to spiral into anxiety, but to prepare yourself mentally. Every morning, spend a few minutes imagining what could go wrong today. What challenges might I face? What provocations might come my way? Then mentally rehearse how you'll respond. If someone criticizes you unfairly, how will you handle it? If a project fails, what will you do? If you're betrayed, how will you maintain yourself? When you've already faced something mentally, it loses its power over you. This is not negative thinking. This is psychological inoculation. Athletes do this, where they visualize facing their opponent's best moves. Surgeons do this. They mentally rehearse complications before operating. Warriors do this. They imagine battle scenarios before deploying. Why? Because when the thing happens, it's not a shock. It's something you've already navigated mentally. You know what you'll do. The unbothered man has already faced, in his mind, most of what life can throw at him. So when it actually happens, he's not scrambling. He's executing a prepared response. Try this. At the start of each day, spend 3 minutes with these questions. What's the worst thing that could happen today? How would I want to respond if it does? This turns potential surprises into expected scenarios. And expected scenarios are far less destabilizing than unexpected ones. But the shadow work warning. Everything I've described, the dichotomy of control, the discipline of assent, premeditation of adversity, is powerful. But there's a trap you need to avoid. The trap is using these tools for suppression instead of mastery. If you're unbothered because you've numbed yourself to feeling, you're not unbothered. You're dissociated. If you're calm because you've locked all your emotions in a box and refused to look at them, you're not calm. You're fragile. Eventually the box breaks. True equanimity includes the ability to feel everything. It's not the absence of emotion. It's the sovereignty over how you express emotion. The Stoics understood this. Marcus Aurelius wrote extensively about grief, about love, about loss. He felt deeply, but he chose how to respond to what he felt. Here's the critical distinction. Suppression says, I shouldn't feel this. This feeling is wrong. I need to push it down. Mastery says, I feel this. This feeling makes sense. Now, what do I choose to do with it? Suppression creates pressure. Suppressed emotions don't disappear. They accumulate, gaining strength in the shadows, until they explode or leak out in destructive ways. Mastery creates freedom. Acknowledged emotions lose their compulsive power. When you can feel anger without being controlled by it, when you can feel fear without being driven by it, you're free. Most overreactions today are echoes of past experiences, emotions that were never properly processed, wounds that were never properly healed. The person who yells at their partner over a small mistake isn't really angry about the mistake. They're angry about a lifetime of feeling dismissed. The current situation is just the trigger. The person who crumbles at minor criticism isn't really reacting to the feedback. They're reacting to decades of feeling not good enough. This is shadow material, unprocessed emotion living in your unconscious, driving your behavior without your awareness. The truly unbothered man has done the work to bring his shadow into light. He's examined his overreactions and asked, where does this really come from? He's processed old grief, old rage, old shame, not to eliminate these feelings, but to understand them, to integrate them, to stop being unconsciously controlled by them. This is not something I can teach you in this chapter. This is work you do with a therapist, a men's group, deep personal reflection, maybe sacred plant medicine if that's your path. Different people use different methods, but the work must be done, because without it, you're not building mastery. You're building a more sophisticated prison. The unbothered man can access his full emotional range. His calm comes from having been to the depths, not from avoiding them. The ancient thinkers were preparing, not retreating. There's a misunderstanding about Stoicism, that it's about being cold, unfeeling, withdrawn from life. This is exactly wrong. Marcus Aurelius wasn't withdrawing from responsibility. He was managing an empire. Epictetus wasn't avoiding challenges. He was teaching people how to face them. Seneca wasn't retreating from emotion. He was learning how to channel it. They understood that the mind can either multiply your suffering or mitigate it. And they chose mitigation. They understood that life will provoke you. Loss will come. Betrayal will happen. Failure is inevitable. The question is not whether you'll face these things. The question is who you'll be when you do. Will you be controlled by circumstances, or will you maintain yourself through them? Every philosophy we've discussed, the dichotomy of control, the discipline of ascent, premeditation of adversity, is fundamentally a method for mastering your own mind. Because your mind, left untrained, is chaotic. It catastrophizes. It clings to what should be let go. It resists what cannot be changed. It creates suffering where none needs to exist. But your mind, properly trained, becomes your greatest ally. It discerns what matters from what doesn't. It faces reality clearly, and it responds to difficulty with resilience instead of collapse. This is not about becoming someone you're not. It's about becoming who you actually are, beneath all the reactive conditioning. You were not born reactive. You learned it, which means you can unlearn it. You were not born anxious about things outside your control. You developed that habit, which means you can develop different habits. You were not born overwhelmed by every provocation. You were trained into that pattern by a world that benefits from your reactivity, which means you can train yourself out of it. The ancient Stoics offer you tools, frameworks, practices, not as dogma but as experiments. Try the dichotomy of control. Actually practice it. When you feel yourself getting worked up about something, ask, is this within my control? If it's not, practice redirecting your energy to what is. Try the discipline of ascent. When you have a strong emotional reaction, pause and examine the judgment underneath it. Do you have to agree with that judgment? Can you hold it more loosely? Try premeditation of adversity. Spend a few minutes each morning imagining what could go wrong. Then imagine yourself handling it calmly. Notice how it changes your actual response when difficulties arise. These are not philosophical abstractions. These are training methods. And like any training method, they work when you practice them. The unbothered mind is not a gift some people receive and others don't. It's a construction project. You build it, one practice at a time, one moment of choosing differently at a time. And the foundation, the philosophical bedrock that makes all the techniques possible, is this simple recognition. You cannot control what happens to you, but you can always control how you respond. That gap between circumstance and response is where all your freedom lives. The ancient philosophers found it. Generations of practitioners have confirmed it. Now it's your turn to discover it for yourself. Chapter 8. The Daily Practice and the Quiet Power. There is a difference between a man who has read about calm and a man who is calm. The difference is practice. You can understand every concept in this book. You can agree with every principle. You can recognize the wisdom of every technique and still be reactive, still be unbothered, still be controlled by your emotions, because knowledge without practice is just entertainment. This is not philosophy anymore. This is the daily grind that makes philosophy real. Let me give you the practice, the actual concrete, repeatable actions that turn intellectual understanding into lived reality. The morning fortress, 10 minutes before you check your phone, before you engage with the world, before you allow external stimuli to shape your state. 10 minutes, every morning, non-negotiable. Here's the structure. Minutes 1 to 3, breathing or meditation. Sit comfortably, close your eyes, focus on your breath. This is not complicated. Breathe in for 4 counts, hold for 4 counts, breathe out for 6 counts. Repeat. The goal is not to empty your mind. The goal is to notice when your mind wanders and bring it back. That noticing and returning, that's the training. When you're strengthening the neural pathway between awareness and choice, you're building the muscle that will allow you to notice your reactions before you act on them. 3 minutes every morning, minutes 4 to 7. Preview the day, open your eyes. Think about the day ahead. What meetings do you have? What difficult conversations might arise? What challenges are you likely to face? Where might you be provoked? Don't just list them, visualize them. See yourself in those moments, then pre-decide your responses. If someone challenges you in the meeting, you'll pause for 3 seconds before responding. If your partner is stressed when you get home, you'll respond with calm rather than matching their energy. If traffic is terrible, you'll use it as breathing practice rather than getting agitated. And you're doing what Seneca taught, premeditation. You're facing the day's provocations mentally before they happen physically. 4 minutes every morning, minutes 8 to 10, read or review. Principles. This is where you reinforce the framework. You might read a passage from Marcus Aurelius, or a section from this book, or your own list of principles you're trying to internalize. The goal is to load your mind with the right concepts before the world loads it with noise. You're priming yourself, reminding yourself who you're trying to be. 3 minutes every morning. That's it. 10 minutes. Before your phone, before the chaos. This is the fortress. This is the foundation that makes everything else possible. The micro practices throughout the day. The morning fortress sets your state. The micro practices maintain it. These are tiny interventions you weave into your day. None of them takes more than 10 seconds, but they compound. The 2-second pause. Before responding, every time someone provokes you, minor or major, pause for 2 seconds before responding. Every single time. This is the most important practice in this entire book. 2 seconds. That's all. In those 2 seconds, your prefrontal cortex comes online. Your amygdala activity decreases. You shift from automatic reaction to conscious choice. At first, you'll forget. You'll react, then remember afterward that you meant to pause. That's fine. You're building awareness. Eventually, you'll catch yourself during the reaction. You'll be mid-sentence and think, "Oh, I'm doing it again." Keep practicing. Eventually, you'll catch yourself before the reaction. You'll feel the spike, pause, and then choose your response. That's when transformation happens. The question, will this matter tomorrow? When something frustrates you, triggers you, upsets you, ask this question, will this matter tomorrow? If not, let it go immediately. Will this matter in a month? If not, give it proportional energy, which is very little. Will this matter in a year? If yes, then it deserves your full attention and deliberate response. This question provides instant perspective. Most of what upsets you will be completely irrelevant within days. Respond accordingly. The breath at transitions, between meetings, between tasks, between conversations. 1 complete breath cycle. 4 counts in, 6 counts out. This resets your nervous system. It prevents stress from accumulating throughout the day. Most people carry stress from one interaction into the next, building pressure until they explode over something trivial. The breath at transitions releases that pressure before it builds. The body scan, 3 times. Daily morning, midday, evening. Take 20 seconds to scan your body. Where are you holding tension? Jaw, shoulders, fists, stomach? Notice it. Breathe into it. Release it. This builds the awareness you need to catch stress responses early, before they become full reactions. These micro practices take almost no time, but they change everything. The evening review, 5 minutes before bed. Reflect on the day. Identify one moment where you were provoked. How did you respond? Did you pause? Did you react? Did you choose your response or was it automatic? No judgment, just observation. Then, how would you prefer to have responded? Visualize that alternative response. This is training for next time. Identify one moment of genuine calm, a moment where you felt unbothered, where you maintained composure. Anchor that feeling. Remember what it felt like in your body. This is what you're building toward. Forgiveness for failures. Intention for tomorrow. You will fail at this practice. You will forget the 2-second pause. You will react when you meant to choose. You will lose your composure. This is guaranteed. So before sleep, forgive yourself. You're learning a skill. Skills take time. Then set your intention for tomorrow. One specific thing you'll practice. Maybe it's the pause before responding. Maybe it's staying calm in a specific situation you know will arise. 5 minutes, every evening. The transformation timeline. Let me be honest about what to expect. Days 1 to 30, you will mostly fail. You'll recognize you were triggered after you've already reacted. But this is progress. You're building awareness. Days 30 to 90, you'll start catching yourself during reactions. Mid-sentence, you'll think, I'm doing it again. This is real progress. You're getting faster. Days 90 to 180, you'll start catching yourself before reactions. You'll feel the spike and manage to pause. Not always, but sometimes. This is where transformation becomes tangible. Days 180 to 365. The pause becomes more automatic. You're unbothered more often than not. You're choosing your responses instead of being controlled by them. The identity shift is happening. Beyond 365, unbothered is who you are, not something you're trying to do. It's your default. You can still be provoked, but it takes much more, and you recover much faster. This is not instant. This is a year-long project minimum, probably longer. But consider, you're going to live the next year anyway. You can live it reactive, controlled by every provocation, or you can live it practicing, building sovereignty. Either way, the year will pass. The quiet power, what becomes available. Let me tell you what's on the other side of this practice. Deeper relationships. When you're not constantly reacting, when you can stay calm during conflict, intimacy deepens. People feel safer with you. They trust you with their vulnerability because you've demonstrated you can handle it without escalating. More career responsibility. Organizations give power to people who can handle it. The person who maintains composure under pressure gets more pressure, which leads to more opportunity. Your unbotheredness becomes your professional advantage. Lower cortisol, longer life. Chronic stress kills. This is not metaphor. High cortisol levels are associated with cardiovascular disease, weakened immune function, accelerated aging. The unbothered live longer, healthier lives. Creative capacity. The anxious, reactive mind has no space for creativity. It's too consumed with managing threats. But the calm mind, the mind that's not constantly in stress response, has access to insight, intuition, creative problem solving. Freedom most never experience. You stop being controlled by circumstances. You stop being manipulated by people who know your triggers. You stop being your own worst enemy. This is the freedom that wealth can't buy. That status doesn't confer, that nothing external provides. You become sovereign over yourself, and the person who is sovereign over themselves is sovereign over their world. The ripple effect. Your calm affects everyone around you. Your partner experiences less stress because you're not escalating conflicts. Your children learn emotional regulation by watching you model it. Your colleagues feel safer bringing you problems because they trust you won't panic. You become the anchor, the one people orient toward when everything else is chaos. This is not selfish work. This is the most generous thing you can do, to master yourself so you can show up fully for others. the final principle. You will still be provoked. You will still sometimes react. This practice does not make you immune to emotion or invulnerable to provocation. The difference? Now you know the alternative. Now you've experienced what it feels like to pause instead of react, to choose instead of being compelled, to remain unbothered when everything in your biology is screaming at you to respond. And once you know that alternative exists, once you've tasted that freedom, you can never fully go back. You might forget temporarily, you might slip into old patterns, but you know there's another way, and you have the tools to return to it. Every moment is a new opportunity to choose calm. The last moment doesn't matter. This moment is fresh. You reacted poorly 3 minutes ago. That was 3 minutes ago. Right now, in this moment, you can pause. The unbothered mind is not a destination you arrive at and stay in forever. It's a direction you choose. Again and again and again, until choosing it becomes who you are. The beginning. Tomorrow morning, not next week, not when you feel ready, not when circumstances are better. Tomorrow morning, begin the practice. 10 minutes of the morning fortress before you touch your phone, before the world gets its hooks in you. The 2-second pause before your first response of the day. The evening review of one provocation before you sleep. Start there. Just those 3 things. The rest will follow. Because here's what I know. You are already capable of this. The unbothered mind is not something you need to acquire. It's something you need to uncover. It's who you are beneath all the reactive conditioning, all the accumulated stress patterns, all the learned behaviors that no longer serve you. You were born with the capacity for calm. Life trained it out of you. Now you're training it back in. This is not easy. If it were easy, everyone would do it. Most people will read this book and change nothing. They'll agree with everything but practice nothing. Don't be most people. Be the person who actually does the work, who practices, who fails and practices again, who builds the unbothered mind through daily repetition even when it feels like nothing's changing. Because eventually, everything changes. One unbothered moment is a victory. 1,000 unbothered moments is a transformation. 10,000 unbothered moments is an identity. You don't have to become something you're not. You just have to practice becoming who you actually are. The tools are here. The framework is clear. The practices are simple. Now it's just a matter of doing it. Starting tomorrow. We're final words. Your silence is your greatest weapon. Not because it defeats others, but because it perfects you. The unbothered mind is not the absence of feeling. It's the mastery of response. It's the ability to feel everything and still choose what serves you. It's sovereignty over yourself in a world that constantly tries to control you. The reactive man is controlled by circumstances, manipulated by provocations, driven by impulses he doesn't understand. The unbothered man is the master of himself, and the man who is master of himself is master of his world. This is not philosophy. This is practice. This is not theory. This is daily discipline. This is not what you read. This is what you do. Go now, practice, become. The unbothered mind is waiting for you, not out there, and not in some distant future when you've figured everything out. Right here, right now, in the next moment when you're provoked, in those 2 seconds between stimulus and response. That's where your empire is. Build it.